Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And we are with you without fail. Faithfully. However, failure is always an option. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. We all fail at something. And we all succeed at others. So
We do?
Sure.
Oh. Maybe I'm a late bloomer.
Oh, dear.
But yes, the subject of tonight's show is going to be one of our nearest and dearest, failure.
Uh-huh.
And that, probably, Margaret, that probably strikes a little fear into the hearts of our listener. because people don't like to fail.
It's true. When you've failed at something, that disappointment that you have internally, it's not pleasant. We've all experienced, like, oh, I didn't do it, I didn't make it, it didn't happen. And it's a hollowness. I don't know how else to explain it. It's a very hollow feeling, and you're like, oh. And then it's what happens after that event that makes it impactful. Should we go into it already, or what do you want to do?
We don't want to fail at this here. I'm not sure which way you mean by go into it, but you're absolutely right. Maybe we should start with a little, basically is where you started, which is that everyone fails at things throughout their life. And I think early on, you are given license to fail. What I mean by that is children are you expect them that they're going to fail at things. In fact, you would never say to a child that you have to do your first step perfect. You have to run across the yard. You have to do your first letter on a page perfect. You give them license to fail because you say, and very properly, you say, well, they're just learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the wisdom of that is often glossed over. There's no way. Well, the reverse is never true. You don't come into the world knowing how to do things. And there's a subtle point which I want to just digress for a moment. You do come into the world knowing a lot of things, but they're somewhat hidden from you. And some of the things that you know are so deeply within your knowledge base that they don't appear to be knowledge. They just appear to be, who you are, or part of your being. But in fact, you come to this incarnation with a lot of knowledge, a tremendous amount of what makes your incarnate spirit you. Okay. However, you don't come into this world, generally speaking, with all the skills that you left it with. If you were a wonderful dancer or a wonderful musician, we all know of people who come into the world seemingly to have these amazing talents. However, they still require a reacquisition, a retraining, and certainly everybody comes into the world, and you see a child, and they're just incapable of caring for themselves. They're incapable necessarily of talking or walking or doing so many things. So what do? We give them space, very properly. We give them space to learn, to grow, and in the process of doing that, they very often fail. And that failure is always, in a parenting situation, you always encourage them by saying, it's okay, or words to that effect. try again.
Mm-hmm.
Try again. You encourage, you say, well, you did really well, but the child knows, okay, they've witnessed what it is that they're trying to do. They've seen everyone else walk around, or they've seen everyone else do whatever the heck it is that they're trying to do, talk or whatever. And so they're very properly trying their best. If you've seen a child in the process of trying to do something they haven't done before, the concentration level is pristine. It's beyond belief. They are focused like a laser on what it is they want to do. They're trying to place their lips in just the right place and just trying, trying to say that one word, and they're watching you very carefully to see if what you're doing. You're watching them like screw their lips up into a funnel and yeah, and you say, good.
You mean getting
talk or walk or anything.
Introducing them to speech or words or whatever.
I would say, Margaret, though, that they don't need introduction. They literally, and we all have this desire to join in, to get into the conversation, to do the things that everybody else is doing, walking and talking and doing all those things, in exploring the world through your growing capabilities, right? However, failure is woven throughout childhood. But somewhere along the way, you start to get this idea that oh, you should know that already. Or, you did that once good and you shouldn't do, now you're sliding back. You're not doing what you're supposed to be. The critical voice rises up, and I think it rises along with the ego. You start to be self-critical. Oh, why can't I do this right? Why can't, I should be able to go faster. I should be able to do better. I should, my failure is turned into a voice in your head or an external voice which you internalize that says, why are you failing? Why are you not doing it right? And it becomes, a sort of a driving lash in the back of your head. You're so, incapable. You're so stupid. You're so this. You're so that. Why do you do these things? Why can't you just do it right? And that transition from giving space to failure, and the trade-off is that learning occurs, becomes narrower and narrower to the point where you get almost no space to fail. In fact, you get zero space to fail. And every action can be put under a microscope, can be hyper criticized, and you can almost feel that the whole world is judging your actions, and you become part of the chorus. Your internal voice starts judging you perhaps even more harshly than others may be. You may imagine that they're judging you far more harshly than they really are. So this transition into the you've got to be perfect state from the you're just learning and you're growing and your failure is all part of that process. As long as you try again, that gets kind of squeezed out with a lot of people. And I think at that point you get this tremendous aversion. And it becomes a constant thing. You get this tremendous aversion to failure. Children move away from just failing and trying again to failing and wanting to conceal it. Hide your report card,
right.
or telling lies in order to cover up failure. That wasn't me. I didn't touch it. I didn't do that. I didn't. That whole kind of persona switch, so that now you're pretending to be perfect. And that I always do it right. If you're looking for failure, look at that guy down there. He's the one who's failing, or she's the one that's failing.
Well, I think what happens is that you start when you're young, and for people in general, the adults, let's say, or just whoever's there, it's acceptable to fail because they understand the limitations that a young one is at. They've got to figure out how to use the body to move, how to speak, how to think. And as long as they're learning, it should be acceptable. There is a certain point where certain people feel that, well, now you've got it, so, this is unacceptable because I've said that now you know how to do that. Now you should be doing it that way all the time. And it's a short-sightedness in terms of understanding that you're constantly learning. And the ultimate failure is not realizing that failure is a learning experience. It pushes you onward to be able to learn, to grow in ability and technique, to be able to do what it is that you're supposed to do. The expectations, maybe that's the best way to put it. It's at that point that the expectations become linked to a person's identity.
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to do that because that's who you are. You are now a mature individual. So you're supposed to act a certain way. It's like, what's that phrase? Today's too hard. I can't do any adulting.
I feel that way all the time.
Well, but this is what I mean. The adulting aspect is like, now you're an adult, so you're supposed to do this now. And it's expectation again. When you realize that failure happens, and so do successes, but true failure is not learning anything. It's not trying again.
Mm.
That's true failure.
Mm. Well, let me back up a little bit because you're absolutely right. You said something very important. I think the key, the point at which you eschew failure is when you've bought the expectations, the egoic expectation of perfection. And I think the phrase that I know I know that you'll twig on is in fact that I know. When you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and the conversation is literally them waiting for your gums to stop flapping so they can tell you what they know, or they stop you, whether they put their hand up or they just, make it clear in the conversation that what you're telling them, they already know. In fact, there's no thing that you can no piece of information that you can give them that they don't already know. The ego, the identity, has been wrapped up in these layers of I am powerful, I am knowledgeable, I know what I'm doing, I am perfect, and any mistake, any failure is someone else's failure, not mine. The ego never fails. The ego is either my intentions were good and this dastardly thing happened that caused me to fail, but it's not my fault. I am perfect. Everything I did was perfect, but this thing that this person who was out to get me sabotaged me, or this random event came in, and next time we'll make sure that never happens again, right? Because my ego doesn't permit me to admit to accept failure. It's the opposite of that famous Mythbusters T-shirt. Failure is always an option. Is the ego says failure is never an option. It's never, and this is the key phrase. It's never my failure. It's always the failure of weaker, lesser, evil others who were either incompetent or malicious. They had bad intent. Then they caused me to fail. and it's not my responsibility. I just have to make sure that they get punished or that never happens again.
I think the phrase that triggers is, "You failed." All right, that phrase right there just raises the hackle. Like, what do you mean? Who failed? What failed?
Wait.
What?
It's we succeeded, but you failed.
Okay. Well, I guess if you want to qualify it like that,
Well,
I'm just
saying that the success has, like I was saying, it's a we for success, but a you for failure.
right. But that phrase is a trigger, because in that statement, you're basically saying that it's someone's responsibility.
Mm.
And the truth of the matter is, you look at it, and if you see the whole picture, there are many times when things just unfold as they are, regardless of who made the decision to go one way or the other, or who is taking the brunt or the results of this decision.
Mm.
You are basically saying at that point, I understand this whole thing completely, this experience completely. I know which way it's supposed to go. And it didn't go that way, well, it's your fault then.
Your fault. Never mine.
So to understand that whole situation, the honesty level is usually completely lacking. It's usually a story going on.
Mm.
And when someone accuses another person of this, what's being brought into question is your identity, who that person is. Mm. When you say you failed, you're basically saying you're a failure.
Mm.
Not that the task has failed, but what you're saying is you are a failure. And that's where the loadedness of that statement comes in.
Mm.
Instead of saying that this failed, was there anything that we could do differently?
Mm-hmm.
Or we could have tried. It's acknowledging the wholeness of that situation, what was actually possible, what wasn't possible, and making the decision, realizing that these are the results. It's a conscious decision. And there are situations where you will fail, regardless, because it's really not in your control. You're responsible for the next step, the next decision, but you're not responsible for the outcome.
Mm.
And that takes a lot of, what would be the word? A lot of wisdom to understand how that flows. Compassion should be flowing all the time, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails at something. And we all certainly know what it feels like to feel that accusation of failure or to be called a failure. And it's, again, distinguishing between the two. It's, again, like, I feel angry, I am angry. Mm. Or I am anger. It's not. You cannot, to have your identity be consumed by a failure shrinks you down, because you have to shrink down the concept of who you are so completely that it's encapsulated by this event.
By failure or success.
Mm-hmm. Or success, exactly.
Well, and so we have to, let's go back, because you went through so many things there, but it's incredibly, the point you just made is really the central one, is that identification with outcome is the egoic thing. So when the ego says that it intends to do this thing and going to get this outcome, And it's identifying with that that whole, let's say, that whole process. In other words, the ego has said, success is the only thing I'm willing to accept. Perfection is the only thing I'm willing to accept. And so if success or the goal, the outcome, doesn't occur, the ego has to do immediately two or three things. It has to find something or someone to blame, because the ego cannot accept that its desired outcome did not occur. And it will, the egoic reaction to an undesired outcome. So you said, I'm going to do this, going to do this, going to do this, and it did not happen. The egoic reaction to that is to find, to push it as far away from itself as possible, to do anything, to say anything, to blame anyone, to blame the blameless, to call in, the universe, in judgment, to say that everything was against me, for argument's sake. So the ego pushes failure away because it sees it as Margaret just said, as if I accept failure, that the outcome didn't occur that I wanted, that I am failure, that I am now less than perfect. I can't. The ego feels that as a little death, as a little destruction. It puts so much of its personal importance. Okay, that's fine. Personal power, personal importance on the outcome. If it doesn't come out the way that the ego said it was going to come out, it feels wounded. It feels distressed. It has to find another to blame, to point externally and say, it wasn't my fault. It was this. It was that. It was the other thing. You see this, in many, many, many different walks of life. Those who are in power will often blame anything else except themselves. Now, I want to just toot my own or our group's horn for a second here. And the group I'm talking about is where you will find much less of this. It still exists. It's people are people everywhere, but you'll find much less of this in fields which are directly engaged in reality testing, and that I would say is the sciences or engineering. And the reason why is that you get you will be moved out of the field very quickly if all you do is blame others or blame the universe for your failures or for whatever, because you're not a good engineer if you don't immediately accept on the way in that you're trying something, or a scientist. You have a theory about something, but the facts and reality and the actual event that happens rules. And what you're there to do when things don't go right, or rather that when things don't come out the way you said they might come out, a good engineer, scientist, or someone in those fields says not, it's your fault, or it's the universe's fault. No, then you're a bad scientist and you're a bad engineer. You say, gosh, I wonder why that happened. Let's figure this out. We have to learn something about this. So failure becomes your instructor. Now, people are people, and that isn't to say that there aren't those who will look at something and blame everything up and down. That this, well, the science, I say this should be. I don't care what the facts say. It has to be this. Okay, yeah, and that's ego. But if you're truly someone who is looking for truth, and if you're looking for actual reality, if you're trying to wrestle with that which is, you have to perforce accept that you can't control everything, and you have to accept, as the shirt says, that failure is always an option, because you intend to do something, X, Y, or Z, like shoot a rocket into space, and it's a hard thing to do, and you have to know that going in, and you have to do your very, very best. But at the end of the day, when the rocket blows up or just doesn't work for whatever reason, you have to very humbly say, well, it didn't work. You got to figure out why. And I was the phrase of "I was wrong." You have to be strong enough in your own little self to say, "I was wrong. I did it wrong. I didn't do it right." And if you practice that a little bit, you're bringing yourself back to your childhood self. But I'm going to try again, and I'm going to try and learn something. So the ego hates that. It hates learning something, because then it has to admit that it didn't know, that it wasn't sure, that it didn't know how the outcome was going to go, that it told everybody that it was going to happen this way, and you have to eat a little crow and say, well, yes, I was wrong. It's hard for the ego to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard. But that's the path to wisdom. Margaret just said it. If you want to learn something, if you want to become wise, you have to accept going in that for all your best intentions, for everything you thought, all the things that you thought how this was going to work, that at the end of the day, it may fail, and you are going to have to say, I was wrong. And then you're going to have to say, let's figure out why, and then you're going to have to say, let's try again. Because if you don't do those three things in approximately that order, then you're no longer doing the job of a scientist or an engineer or somebody who deals with reality. You're dealing in fantasy and ego and blame and, just, it's never my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. You're not going anywhere. You're just kind of in your head.
Yeah, no, there's been plenty of people that I've met that feel basically that because they're intelligent, they know better than anybody else because I'm smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
So I can figure it out better.
I've got more degrees.
And you look at it and you go, how's that working for you?
No, how's that working for you?
Well, it's just these people are usually very lonely. And
they can stand them.
They've shoved their emotional, the emotional parts of them, the parts that are looking for connection, off to the side because they can't believe that they can have a relationship with another person because everybody else is less than them. So it basically holds that relationship in this power over, power under kind of interchange where, as far as they're concerned, nobody is their equal. So therefore, they basically lord it over everyone, and people don't want to be treated that way. But I have seen people who, yes, they're very intelligent, but they treat people who love them, their wife, their children, as if they are just stupid, which is sad. It's truly, truly sad because the people that love them look at them like, and they see what's going on. They see that their husband, their father is offending all the other people that they're interacting with, and they just feel that that's, there's nothing I can do to help. I've tried to help, but there's not much I can do with this interaction because the foundation of it is mostly feeling inadequate. In other words, this person basically felt he was less than talking to other people in relationship, and he understands that people are pushing him away. The excuse, because he uses his intelligence, well, that's because I'm smarter than them. That's why they don't like me.
Well, but I hear you, but I think it goes back to also, if you're talking about failure, that these folks who are very intelligent have also internalized that I'm never wrong, because what that person is, in my opinion, is extremely fragile ego, very first of all, a very inflated ego. All these things that you said are the traits of a narcissist or of a sort of a very, if not narcissistic, at least extremely self-important and as you said, power over kind of person. They're dominant. They're the smartest person in the room.
I feel that they are just very, very needy. They had never gotten what they needed when they were little. There's a certain level of love and interaction that you're supposed to get when you're little, and if you don't get it, and you're searching all the time. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So getting there, but in the context of failure, this personality type, that, as you mentioned, that's exceedingly intelligent, is in one sense blind and very, very out of touch with reality. Very lonely is another way of putting it, because their ego, the egoic inflation, which says I can never be wrong, I'm the smartest person in the room. Reality has to bend to me. I decide what's right and what's not right. Makes them very lonely, yes, but it also makes them and very isolated as well. But also extremely fragile. When reality actually intrudes, and we saw this, in Sloan Kettering, with these, you'd have very, very smart people who, when they said something, they were very used to it being unquestioned. Completely, it's gospel. It's from on high. It's the two tablets coming down the mountain. If I say it, it's true. And if you question them, who are you? Who you wiggling worm, that you should try to ask for me to explain myself or to justify any of my pronouncements. And if you, by chance, this could have happened once or twice when we were there, prove them wrong. Oh, then you were an enemy to be avoided at all costs from that point forward, because without naming names, this egoic addiction to being right all the time and to being the smartest person in the room is so fragile that if you empirically prove them wrong, they will react either with towering rage, or blaming everyone around, who could possibly, it wasn't my fault, it had to be, you must be misinterpreting this, or they will never speak to you again because now you're the enemy,
Right.
You've pierced this iron curtain of intelligence that I've been putting up, because when you do that, the fear, those who live on the knife edge of self-judged perfection fear at a visceral level that anyone should challenge them and be right, because that whole house of cards, that whole chimera, this whole facade,
the face that they've made.
Right. Oh, well, so this peon with a bachelor's degree just told you, the great doctor, that you're wrong, and it looks like you are wrong. Oh, well, now you're persona non grata to be cast into the outer darkness, because in the other case, in the case where you are truly a truth seeker, you're an Einstein or whatever, you are the smartest person in the room. If you're not bound up in ego, you say, I'm always here to learn. I don't know everything. And what a burden to be someone who knows everything. You want to be endlessly curious. You want to allow the smallest child, suffer the little children to come onto me, right? Because there's wisdom even in that innocence. And if you allow that in, you've completely allowed openness for learning and for failure. You can say, well, I may be a 17-degree PhD, but this little kid over here just got it right. And I'm going to just say, yep, you're right. And I'm wrong. And it's okay.
The truth of the matter is the correcting phrase, especially if you're talking about doctors who feel that they know the way it should be according to the protocols. It's not about you. It's about your patient. It's about this child. And that refocuses everybody.
It should.
Usually it does, because at least the doctors that we were dealing with, they understood that what we're trying to do is save this one's life, this little one's life. So it refocuses, and you realize that they are using their training and all of their techniques and learning, trying to save their life. And the one thing they will admit is when the data is pointing to something that is contradictory to what they've been doing. So it's fascinating.
No, so this is a good jumping off point, if you don't mind my saying so, to talk about the benefits of failure, or the benefits of certainly realizing failure. Do you want to, let's bring in our Tolle quote, because I think this will kind of form the next little bit of our conversation here.
Sure.
Do you want to go for that?
Okay. You must have failed deeply on some level, or experienced some deep loss or pain, to be drawn to the spiritual dimension. Or perhaps your very success came empty and meaningless, and so turned out to be a failure. Tolle.
So here's the wrapped up in this, which if you're still mired in ego, you're going to say this is crazy town. But if we go into this, and we are going to go into this a little bit, but wrapped up in this is the purpose of failure, or rather, the genius of failure, the benefit of failure. Okay. You saw, and we can bring this in. You saw a video, and I saw a different one. But I believe the central theme of both of those talks was that failure to the ego is death, but it is properly chipping away at that egoic addiction. And when you're put in a situation where you fail deeply, deep loss, an impossible situation that there's no way to succeed, and everything you do causes failure, and it attacks the ego, and causes more failure, and attacks it again. And eventually that cycle, and it doesn't have to be terribly long, but that cycle of having to accept, having to be real, as Margaret just said, when the doctors really saw that the data is going the wrong way, the real one says, well, what we're doing is not working. We have to allow that everything we thought was going to accomplish this goal is not working. We have to accept that failure. We have to be willing to learn. And then on the personal level, the deep recurring failure, everything I do just does not work, and I still feel that I want to do this, that this is this thing which I am here on this earth to be requires that I try and try and try again, and I fail and I fail and I fail again. It removes slowly over time these egoic blocks of how perfect I am and how wonderful I am and how powerful I am and how many degrees I have. And it opens you up to the reality that in fact failure is just the opportunity to do two things: to learn, as you did when you were a child, and to try again with this new knowledge, with this new experience. And when you're talking about it in the non-physical, it can be an opportunity to, in essence, get past the ego, to silence the ego, because the ego is diminished by failure, and you have to allow it to be diminished by failure. You have to say, yeah, I'm an innocent child again. I can fail at any time. But that is a tremendous revelation.
Well, I think the point where you have identified with a role.
Mm.
And I mean identified. In other words, I am mother. All right. And your child is dying. Pretty much given a death sentence. All right. You sit there and you go, well, what do? Do we fold? Do we just cry and rage? And don't get me wrong. It's not that you don't go through those stages. But it's always, well, what is your next step? Because your child is looking at you and wants to live. He doesn't want to roll over and die, or she doesn't. He wants to live. So understanding that life is, and it wants to continue, is foundational. And because you love life, you realize, okay, I'm going to do my very best to maintain life. And on that journey, your definition of life changes. Because you realize that each step is important. Each decision, each event is important in that child's life as well as your life and everyone else who's connected to you. And your definition of life challenges this idea of failure. Because failure, when it happens in this situation where every decision is considered life or death, failure, people look at you and go, no, he's going to die. It's like, well, okay, what's the reality of that? And the reality is we all die at some point. We all die. So when you receive that piece of information, you go, okay. And the timing of your death is not in your hands. The timing of anybody else's death is not in your hands.
Mm.
Those are hard things to accept for a parent-child kind of thing because we all have this assumption that we will die before our children. And suddenly you realize that is an assumption. So through all these failures, things not working, expectations broken, the test is, what do you do in that moment? And I remembered looking at Michael, looking around and just looking at him, at our child and saying, oh, our face is in the mud again. I got to pick myself up, and then we'll try and see what other pathway is available. What can we do? And all the while checking back to see, what do you want to do, honey? Do you still want to fight to live? Do you want to live? And it's always yes. There was never a doubt. There was never a point of giving up. It was always yes. We move on. And you got to experience what it means to ultimately fail completely. And then pick up and go on.
So important here, though, is what you learn, what you just said, is easy to conflate. People say, well, you failed. The child died. Christopher died. The failure would be to believe that. Because, as you just said, everyone dies. Death is not a failure. But your role as mother or father is that tied into that, sort of baked into the cake, is that it's a failure if you let your children get hurt. If you just let them fail, you fail. If you let them, be be roughed up and thrown through the vicissitudes of life that you've failed. So when you're given no choice, and you realize that these things which are occurring to you that people classify as failures are all about outcomes and about expectations and about roles and sort of a straitjacket. It's if you do this and this and this, you're a success. And if you don't do those things, well, then you're a failure A and a failure B and a failure C. Well, you learn that none of that is true, that the successes are not, those goals are just illusions, that the failures are also just illusions, that in fact each outcome is just that. It's an outcome. You learn to live in spite of outcomes, or rather without expectations of outcome. So where are we? We're back, and this is what drags you through when you fail deeply and over again. It drags you through ego. Ego gets burned away.
Yeah.
You're dragged into the spiritual, and you realize that what people call failure is just an illusion. It's egoic. What people call success is the same thing. But everyone loves success and nobody loves failure. Failure is an orphan, as they say. But that doesn't matter. You realize that the orphan failure and the group success, neither one of those things, they're both illusions. What you have is the moment of now, which has everything in it, all of the time. Everything you can possibly do happens in one moment, the moment of now. And all you can do in that moment is, number one, is accept it. Number two is do something or do nothing, but be in it. And then see what happens in the next moment of now. And when that next moment of now is labeled by the world, you can do it to yourself, but you can label it, the world will label it a failure. The ultimate failure, the child dies. Well, you failed. Or you failed every way. Everything you did along the way was wrong. Fail, and then see, it's all your fault. What a lovely illusion. But if you're driven into the spiritual dimension, if you're driven into the burning away of ego, you know that every moment of that life where Christopher wanted to live, where we checked and we said, yes, this is the next thing to do, we lost failure. Well, failure was gone. So was success, by the way. And we were in the moment of just what has to be. Give us what we can know, and we'll accept what we can't know, and we'll take the next step into the unknown, regardless of outcome, only because it was the next step. And once you're there, it's just the next step. It's not a goal. It's not failure. It's not success. Just what needs to be. And in that way, you realize that every part of that life, that journey, is essential, important. It's not a failure. It's not a success. It just is. And all you can do from every outcome is learn from it. Every outcome, success or failure, you learn from it. And so you've gone past the labels and the illusions and the egoic, I'm always a success, it's somebody else's fault. You're burned through that by deep loss, by pain, by failure. And so failure is exceedingly, it's so baked into this world that we don't understand how important it is. So you understand it very importantly when you're a child. If you get back to that every time you fell down trying to walk, you're a failure, you'll never walk again, kid. Might as well give up. Right? Doesn't that sound stupid and silly? Well, the same thing they say to these kids in the cancer wards. Well, kid, you've got cancer, you might as well give up. No. I'm going to try again because I'm going to live in this moment.
And embracing the fact that life is so much more than your successes or your failures. That's a big lesson.
That's huge. That's almost everything.
Well, it's a big lesson because once that's acknowledged and incorporated in the way you live your life, there's no such thing as fear anymore. You've burned through every fear possible because you've already met your worst fear. I mean, as a mother, identified as a mother, your worst fear is losing your child or watching something horrible take their life. And having gone through your worst fear, you realize that your child is more than the experience, and you are much more than the fact that you failed to save him or her. It's very difficult because you may be required to continue mothering the other children you have. You can't dissociate from motherhood because you're required to fulfill that role. But you are slammed into that reality every single moment of the day. Failure. Yeah, I couldn't save them. So where do you go? You make the decision on where you will go from that point. And you understand that judgment is against that role of mother. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But you're more than just mother. So much more.
I think you said something very, very profound. I want to just go back to it. Is you basically, in so many words, said that the failure, the motherhood failure of the child dying, that you're what kind of a mother you let this child die, what kind of father you let this child die. You realize that his life was not defined by that failure, and that what you really find is that if you let your life or another's life, someone that you love, be defined by success or failure, that you've lessened that life. That to cram a person's life into whether or not you could save them, or whether or not they lived, or they died, or they got this degree, or did whatever, is to so cheapen and lessen. You're really stuffing that vastness of the being. The being is here for a period of time. Nobody knows how long. You don't define the being that way. The being is here to experience everything that's in this reality. The experiences don't contain the being. The being contains the experiences. If the experiences happen to be cancer, then it's an experience. And you say, well, you don't want a life like that. Just throw it away. No, because then you're lessening the being entirely. You're saying, well, if I'm not here for what I want to be here for, then it's not worth being here. No, you come here to experience anything, everything. You as a child, you see the tremendous vitality of the being incarnate to experience everything. Children are open to all things. Everything is coming in. Margaret mentioned this many times, that they go into almost like they have to sleep because there's so much coming in at once, and they're so open to it. And then the ego comes in and it narrows it down, tries to pack it in, tries to make the whole smaller and smaller where the information's coming in, making it all about this or all about that, and it has to be this and it has to be that. And then you go into one of these life experiences that blows all that away, and suddenly you're just open to the world, to the universe again. And you realize that confining that life to whether or not they got a cookie, or whether they failed at this or succeeded at that, or had this trophy or that trophy, or lived or died, is way too small. Everyone dies. It doesn't define you. Everyone goes through life through all kinds of challenges, diseases, or whatever it is, or successes. Successes don't define you. Oh, I got this promotion. Oh, I got this car. Oh, I got this, that, the other thing. I must be doing life right. No, it's too small. It's too small for a being.
I always wonder who are they proving themselves to?
The ego.
Well, the ego is proving itself to itself. Is that
Or
what
to other egos. Yes.
Well, okay. What I'm saying is the motivation of why is this necessary to have this thing, to validate your being, because your being doesn't need any of that.
It's true.
Not a bit. But you are convinced somehow to believe that this is necessary for you to be validated by whom?
We had this was some time back, we had a show about why do we need an ego? I think we determined that it was sort of a defense mechanism. Sort of an unconscious defense mechanism.
Well, the belief is, usually the seduction is, your ego goes to your soul and says, I can prevent you from having these bad experiences.
Right, that's exactly it. That's exactly what we said, yes. The ego seduces the soul.
Right. And the truth of the matter is the soul actually knows the truth, knows that it can't, but it wants to believe that maybe that's possible. Maybe I don't have to experience all this badness. And let's face it, none of us want to experience the badness that this world has given us. If we had a choice to consciously do that, most of us down here would say, no, I would never have chosen that. But when you're on the other side in your fuller form, you must have agreed somehow to walk this pathway. Because you don't enter this world unless you agree to. And it's been said that incarnating on this world is the most courageous thing you could possibly do in the infinity of your soul. This is it.
Courageous and also, I think, necessary, because when you come down to, when you incarnate and you put yourself in reality's way, you are now within creation. You're not of creation, you're in creation. When you're within creation, anything can happen. You're here for any experience. That's the bargain. You say, I'm going to envelop myself in reality, in flesh, yes, but really in reality, and let reality do whatever it needs to be.
The reality of this world.
Right, the creation, within creation. And give up all this, all this illusion, or wrap myself in something which could be illusion of control and all those things, and then realize that the experiences here are precious. The relationships here are precious. They're worth any risk. They're worth any experiential outcome. And you develop yourself through that. You become an emanation which brings back experience to that which is vaster.
Well, you bring it into the world of the infinite. And I believe that we have reached the end of our hour.
We failed to complete the talk.
You did?
We'll live with that. Yes, I think. No, we haven't, really. It's not my fault.
There we are. Indeed. All right. I take full responsibility.
I take full responsibility first.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.